I think this is like their presentation. I'm very curious, like what they're thinking about the, what is their philosophy when it comes to the storytelling, as well as with Gamescom. I am going to be talking with developers about story as well. One of the things, like, I can't really ask them for spoilers, right? Like, they're not going to go into spoiler territory. I can't ask them about the root people or, you know, when we would go to the Arathi Empire and all that good stuff. As well as what I find interesting is that the beta has already shown a lot of the storyline. So what I'm wondering is, one of the things that I'm going to ask is, how do you look at offering the story on the beta, like the trade-off of, okay, we're going to get a lot of eyes on it, we're going to get a lot of promotion and testing, versus the whole experience is basically available broken and online. And I'm kind of curious what their philosophy is behind it, as well as what are they doing to get people up to speed on the story so far. And I am loving, Tio, hello there, I am absolutely loving what they've been cooking so far. Like, they've done a catch-up cinematic. They're now doing the Illyria animation where they basically tell her story so far. They're doing more stay a while and listens in game, because let's be fair, most people play a while for the gameplay, not so much for the story, but they are definitely hammering home the idea of, you know, the War Within, the World Soul Saga. It's a lot of story. Come check out our story. And I'm really curious what else they've been cooking. So yeah, I'm really curious about this presentation as well. I might put it up to 1.5 speed. Now, I've been called out about this once upon a time by a different content creator who was like, oh my god, it's so rude to speed up a video. It's not rude, it's just ADHD.
Welcome to a special edition of Wowcast. Thank you so much for joining us today. The team is heads down on wrapping up the
Oh my god, it's Terran!
Expansion ahead of launch. But today we are joined by a few incredible guests. Please introduce yourselves.
Hi, I'm Maria Hamilton. I'm the Associate Design Director on WoW.
Hello, my name is Morgan Day. I am one of the Associate Game Directors working on The War Within.
And I'm Terran Gregory, the Cinematic Narrative Director for World of Warcraft.
So how does the team even approach something as ambitious as the World Soul Saga?
In a word, enthusiastically. You know, we have a really unique opportunity here with the 20th anniversary of World of Warcraft that's fast approaching. We really wanted to take a step back and reevaluate how we develop our expansions. In the past, we might have come at it from the perspective of, well, we've done this a couple times, how did we do it in the past? And moving forward philosophically, we really want to take a fresh new approach and, you know, take our community's excitement and feedback and really make sure that's at the forefront of all of our development moving forward. We wanted to build upon the successes of Dragonflight, right? We felt like we built a really strong foundation there and take a lot of those successes and look to achieve new goals as we move into the World Soul Saga and the War Within. Some of those ideas would be allowing the players to have new ways to express themselves and make sure that there's a ton of variety in the content that they're experiencing in World of Warcraft. Additionally, we want to make sure that we're bringing World of Warcraft to as broad an audience as possible, and we're really working to build new accessibility features and also just new exciting ideas that we also want to bring to the table.
Okay. Did he just say that we looked at what we've done in the past and just do it again? Is that what I just heard? What? No, surely not.
Even approach something as ambitious as the World Soul Saga?
In a word, enthusiastically. You know, we have a really unique opportunity here with the 20th anniversary of World of Warcraft that's fast approaching. We really wanted to take a step back and reevaluate how we develop our expansions. In the past, we might have come at it from the perspective of, well, we've done this a couple times, how did we do it in the past? And moving forward...
No. He does not say, let's do it again. It's more like, we're looking at the past, what have we done there, and how are we going to do it differently? Like, we're looking at the past. Nah, that's not what he said. He said, like, we're looking at what we've done in the past, and how can we, you know, what lessons can we learn there?
Philosophically, we really want to take a fresh new approach and, you know, take our community's excitement and feedback and really make sure that's at the forefront of all of our development moving forward.
No, that's on me. I misunderstood. No, I misunderstood. So what they're doing is, in the past, you know, we've looked at it and taken a look, and now they want to do like a fresh take with more on the feedback, as well as the whole concept of 3 expansions in a row combined into a World Soul Saga. And they wanted to build upon the successes of Dragonflight. And Dragonflight, everybody will have their own opinions on it. For me personally, I thought Dragonflight had some bangers. Like the blue questline, the blue Dragonflight questline, I thought was phenomenal. There's a couple of stay a while and listens that were actually really great. There's this old dragon sitting in the capital that you listen to, and then their storyline flowed into getting more history on the black Dragonflight. I thought there were definitely some bangers in Dragonflight, but not all of it. I think that everybody remembers the memes of we did it for family. Pacing was extremely off. Alexstrasza and the Red Dragonflight didn't even get their own chapter. Like Dragonflight was, for me, better than Shadowlands because it did not do the whole jailer thing. But at the same time, it was also very, very safe, right?
We wanted to build upon
So a mixed bag is what I'm saying.
the successes of Dragonflight, right? We felt like we built a really strong foundation there and take a lot of those successes and look to achieve new goals as we move into the World Soul Saga and the War Within. Some of those ideas would be allowing the players to have new ways to express themselves and make sure that there's a ton of variety in the content that they're experiencing in World of Warcraft.
I do love the expression thing as well, and I really hope that they're going to push this forward. So what they're showing in the video is the hero talents, and I kind of wish, like we asked about this during the hero talent interview, like you're going to make these lightsmiths, and you're going to make these shadow hunters, or whatever they're called. Like they have this whole fantasy package when it comes to the talent system. But it doesn't apply to your interaction with the world itself. It's not like people are going to call you a shadow hunter. You're still insert hero here. And I kind of felt like they could have done more with that in the role-playing sense. It's really cool to see spell animations updated, and it's nice to have like a talent window in the middle that you could, you know, update forwards. But I feel when it comes to storytelling, they could have done way more with the new talent system. But they are also bringing more gameplay, like they're just showing off the delves. And the delves remind me a lot of the scenarios from Mr. Pandaria. They're used not only for gear upgrades and progression, but also storytelling. So I'm hoping that the delves are going to pop off. During beta testing, I couldn't get the vibe for it. But then, I mean, when it's live, you'll get like the upgrade systems, and you get the systems in which you get your tokens and your gear, and you're actually playing for a reason, rather than, oh, I'm just going beta testing. The numbers are still wonky. The fights are still wonky. I hope that they're going to nail delves, because it's like the major new game feature in it.
Additionally, we want to make sure that we're bringing World of Warcraft to as broad an audience as possible, and we're
Oh, and to finish the train of thoughts, by the way, they make mention of expressing yourself. And I spoke about this during PreachCon as well with the role-playing community. If we're talking about storytelling and role-playing, I think that is one of the sections that has been the most ignored during World of Warcraft's development. Role-playing is really something that the community has picked up, and they've invented add-ons which allows them to tell their backstories. But how cool would it be if they could actually do that in-game? How cool would it be if you can modify your gear, or upgrade your emotes or your dances, or, you know, give tools to the role players in order to express themselves in your game? Make the RPG section, like there's a huge section of players that love expressing themselves, give them the tools to do so, right?
We're really working to build new accessibility features and also just new exciting ideas that we also want to bring to the table. Finally, you know, guiding us and crafting this epic adventure is the narrative, right? That's at the forefront of all of our ideas and all of the, you know, stories that we're developing along the way. We always like to plan ahead when we're developing World of Warcraft, but this time is a bit different, right? It's multiple expansions all at once that we're really trying to plant the seeds for these future ideas as we move forward in the World Soul Saga. And at times, you know, I've been in meetings with our creative direction group, and it can be a bit of a challenge to keep all of these ideas in my head all at once. You know, there's a lot of threads that are flying around, but I think the team, you know, is really energized by that opportunity to kind of tell such an epic story. And thankfully, you know, Terran is here, and he's going to talk a bit about all of those awesome ideas as we move forward. And, you know, he's kind of the expert of pulling all of those threads and bringing them all together.
It's kind of like
Rampant, thank you very much for the Prime, baby. Welcome, welcome. So what's really cool is that they're talking about the story being developed with an idea on the future, like multiple planned things out. So the way that I've understood it in the past is that the rule of cool has very much dictated Warcraft story direction. And for those that are completely unaware, the rule of cool means that somebody walks into the room and says, wouldn't it be cool if we could hang out with the orcs of old? How do you fill that in? You end up with an expansion like Waters of Draenor, where the Dark Portal turns red, and all of a sudden you're partying with the old Horde. Or wouldn't it be cool if Illidan returns, right? How do you fill that in? You get an expansion Legion. Wouldn't it be cool if? Now, that doesn't mean that they just come up with random ideas and they don't plan ahead. But it's not like they plan ahead multiple expansions in a row. It was usually like 2 to 4 years, if I remember right. This time around, they're doing 3 expansions in one single go. So they're developing 3 expansions at the same time. And what's really cool is, as they mentioned, there's a whole bunch of threats that they need to keep in mind and the story development and whatnot. But when I think about that, I do really wonder if the risk is going to come into play, which is what if people hate the first part of the story? What if the War Within bombs story-wise? What can you do at that point? Because you are stuck into this cosmology war with Xal'atath, with the light, with the void. You got these things in mind. Can you then, at that point, steer the ship in a completely different direction? And I don't think you can. So it's definitely a risk, but it's really cool to see that they're taking those risks, right? Like, why the hell not? Let's make those risks. Let's see what pops out. Of course, inspired by other MMORPGs, which have been incredibly popular with their storytelling. Like, have you tried the critically acclaimed Final Fantasy XIV? So they've seen like, oh, people really do like storytelling. And I spoke of this a couple of times at BlizzCon as well. In my opinion, WoW's strength is the gameplay. And story, not so much an afterthought. Like, I wouldn't have a YouTube channel dedicated to the lore for 10 years if it was just an afterthought. But it was more like the cherry on top. And people come to WoW for the gameplay first and story second. And that is changing with this mindset going to the World Soul Saga, where they're promoting heavily on the story. Like, come check out our story. And I'm wondering if that's really where the promo lies into. Because, you know, how many people don't you know that like skip the quest and dialogues and I just want to play? How many play the raids with their sounds turned off, right? There was one more thing that I wanted to say, and now I don't know anymore. What else did I wanted to say?
You know, I was really energized by that opportunity to kind of tell such an epic story. And thankfully, you know, Terran is here, and we're really trying to plant the seeds for these future ideas
I don't remember.
as we move forward in the World Soul Saga.
Oh, right, I do remember. They're talking about 20 years of storytelling brought together. And this is a similar promotion that they used back during the Shadowlands. Like, we're closing a book on a story that was being built up during Warcraft 3. And while you can make those connections if you want to, that's not exactly what's been happening. So I'm kind of curious as to why they decided to go this promotional route. Because again, other MMORPGs are like, yeah, we've got like one big book that we've been trying to tell, one overarching storyline, and we're going to close that. WoW hasn't been doing that. So what we saw with the Shadowlands is that retroactively something was added, and that was part of the story all along. And Xal'atath is a much milder version of that. And I'm kind of curious what's going to happen in that regard. Like, how are they going to tie all of this together? And it could be really cool. Like, the story is very much unwritten. I'm really excited to see where it's going to go. I might be a little bit low energy, but please forgive me if you're listening to this like this reaction. It's also a bit toasty, and I've been going on for a while. But I'm really curious how that's all going to come together.
And at times, you know, I've been in meetings with our creative director at once. That a bit about all of those in the middle and bringing them all together.
It's kind of like the conspiracy meme sometimes with the dots and the
right
threads.
in the middle.
What are you most excited for, Terran?
The dots and the threads.
No pirates. Right. Okay. What swords? Who? Leroy's in there. If you're ever old gods ? New gods. If you're ever oh, and they put a picture of they put a picture of themselves in there as well. If you're ever curious, go look up the story of Leroy Jenkins. There's actually a really interesting story behind that.
What are you most excited for, Terran, with the War Within story?
Well, working on World of Warcraft is always exciting.
Yeah, absolutely.
I love working on this world and with this team. It's been really, really, really exciting getting to work with Chris Metzen again after his return and setting the vision for the World Soul Saga, this new chapter of Warcraft that's going to take us through the next few updates. As Morgan mentioned, right, like during Dragonflight, we feel that represented a lot of change, a lot of lessons applied, lessons learned. Looking back on Shadowlands, I believe that we took a lot from that story and developed new ways that we were going to present our characters, our villains, our storylines. And
They mentioned the Shadowlands. What? They fucking mentioned the Shadowlands.
Flight was the first step, but I believe that War Within is a great leap forward in our ambitions to create a compelling narrative, bring our characters to the forefront, and really open the first chapter in the next pivotal moment of World of Warcraft that will set the stakes for the story that will unfold throughout the World Soul Saga.
Cool.
What would you say are some of the narrative aspirations of the saga?
Well, I feel that we've set the bar really high, and we want to meet those expectations and even exceed them. Really trying to create something in the vein of the essence of Warcraft, or the best of Warcraft, bringing that to the forefront. The ways we're going to do that is really investing in our world and story. We always say world and story are some of the most critical parts of the appeal of World of Warcraft. But what does that really mean? You know, our world is a character. It is fleshed out through all means of small stories, big stories. But we want people to be invested in our characters. We want them to go on the adventure with them, to learn more. I believe we have some really compelling stories with some of our most known characters, some of our lesser known characters, and some new characters that we're going to meet along the way.
Something that I love about the World Soul Saga, and we were talking about the 20th anniversary earlier, is that's a really unique strength of World of Warcraft, right? We have characters that you've literally grown up with, right? Like at the launch of World of Warcraft, Anduin, I think, was literally in a crib, right?
He was a little boy. He was a little boy. Have you seen my father?
Yeah, exactly. And we've watched him grow from that boy to the boy prince to now the king that he is today. And this journey is going to continue to take characters like Anduin and
They confused Anduin with Dagran, didn't they? They confused Anduin with Dagran. Oh no.
continue to see them evolve, and others as well. Like Dagran plays a huge role in the War Within, and that's another character that was just a little baby when we started out, and they're going to be taking a much larger role in this epic saga.
Yeah. I think another lesson we learned is cadence and delivery. There were some instances where it felt maybe like the story was very start and stop, or people had to wait around for a long time for resolutions to long-established storylines. And so in trying to address that, we're really looking at the saga as the opportunity to resolve more storylines, bring up new questions, drive the story forward. And one of the things that helps us do that now is the improved content cadence that has been established in Dragonflight. This gives us some really, really handy tools for being able to have smaller updates between larger updates, in which we can have the story move forward, we can focus on individual characters, flesh out their stories more, or even just give the sense that the world is always moving forward and that there's something always new to see in World of Warcraft when it comes to our narrative.
Speaking of characters, Xal'atath is...
I'm genuinely interested how it's gonna play out. Like, I remember in Dragonflight, there were definitely updates in between, but I also remember the feedback from players that they felt like the story was, on the one hand, it was moving at a record pacing speed where they were like, I'm unable to keep up. At the other hand, they were like, it's not going anywhere. Dragonflight is not going anywhere. So I'm interested in how that's going to be for the War Within. Like, did they really look at the Dragonflight reception and take from the best? And how that's going to be implemented forward. Like, for so far, what I've seen on the War Within storytelling, I've been enjoying the absolute crap out of the leveling experience and the build-up of the storylines. They're not all on the same level, I would say. Hollowfall was definitely my favorite, but I also loved Ashkahet. Oh my god. And the end campaign is actually sick. There are some really cool moments in there. Like, for me, one of the major things that I felt when it comes to Dragonflight is that I missed the badass cool moments, right? I had somebody earlier mention in chat, Ronnie, I think it was you, which was like, wouldn't it be cool if we burned down Teldrassil? Yeah, burning down Teldrassil was cool and awful and tragic and a massive impactful moment that people still talk to about this day. Similar with the Purge of Dalaran, similar with the Purge of Stratholme. I've been asking this later, like in Dragonflight, can you recall one moment that makes you go like, whoa, that was really impactful? And that is something that I missed in Dragonflight a lot. As well as, like, for me, when it comes to like the Burning of Teldrassil, I don't think that was the crutch when it comes to Sylvanas' storyline. I think there was a lot more that followed afterwards. So when looking at the War Within, without going too much into spoilers, it definitely has those impactful moments that I've been so very much missing. They also mentioned earlier, as I didn't go into it, like Chris Metzen returns and how happy they are to be working with him again. And a lot of people have been asking, like how do you feel about Madsen's return? And I'm really happy that Madsen is back on board. I'm really excited, especially when it comes to like lead narrative designer, the direction of the storytelling. But I always add up to that, which is one person does not make the storyline, right? There was a post by a Blizzard historian a while back, which spoke about how they actually developed the storylines. Just because Chris Madsen is back does not mean that he single-handedly writes the entire story. There's whole teams that have been working on Shadowlands, that have been working on Dragonflight, that will be working on War Within and beyond as well. But I'm hopeful that under the guidance and the leadership, there's going to be like a clear direction in the storytelling, which is definitely what they seem to be going for. And then I do wonder, like, okay, Madsen is back for the World Soul Saga. It gives the impression that he wants to give closure to the story that he worked on nearly at the beginning, right? It feels like that sword at the end of Legion was left there for a reason, and the story that we got around it did not fulfill the premise. But I wonder, like, okay, what have we done the World Soul Saga and Madsen leaves again? Like, who is going to take over, right? Who is going to be the next generation? But that is very much in the future. Do I feel like reclaiming Gilneas questline didn't feel as important? The Gilneas quest, reclaiming Gilneas, Rose, to be really short about it, was god-awful. Primarily because it had nothing to do with the Worgen, and I don't want to go into a 20-minute rant as to why it was so awful, but it was pretty awful.
Everywhere. She is amazing. What do you think about our new villain?
Xal'atath is very much an interesting character, and I'm super excited to see the reception that people have had since we announced that she's going to be, very much starring in the beginning of the War Within. When it comes to our villains and the development of our villains, we have learned many lessons. We feel that maybe there's been a couple instances where we didn't quite do the work to earn them out or introduce them to our players in a way that felt organic or compelling. Xal'atath is an opportunity to have this character that, for those who played Shadow Priest in Legion, it was a very compelling character. She's marked very, very highly in terms of like kind of fan favorite, but also lesser known. And that's kind of a magic combination of like, hey, let's take this character and bring them into the spotlight and give them a really compelling arc. And
that acknowledgement, by the way, is insane. Like, you heard what he just said, like how they introduced characters and that they didn't feel organic. To have that acknowledged is fucking insane. Let's go, Terran.
And much like we had done throughout Dragonflight in the development of the primal incarnates, like Iridikron and Viranoth and Farak, we put a lot of effort into bringing them into the story one step at a time, introducing them to the player, giving them compelling motivations, making them a dimensional character, making their desires, and making them real people that we can understand and get along with. And Xal'atath is now on her own trajectory to step into the limelight of World of Warcraft, and we're hoping to meet all of those same things. And I really feel that Xal'atath is going to be a very interesting character as we watch her story unfold.
One of the things that we did hear about the Primal Incarnates, and this is especially in relation to the book that eventually followed, which is War of the Scaleborn. Did you know that Firak is actually a cousin of Alexstrasza and taught her how to fight? There was a lot of development when it comes to the characters of the Primal Incarnates that was ended up in the book and did not make it into the game. So while I definitely agree with the mindset of, okay, we slowly introduced these characters and made them compelling, on the surface level, I love a character like Firak and Iridikron and Viranoth, but there's definitely surface level, right? And this goes back into the feedback of the pacing when it comes to, for example, a Viranoth, who at one time stands with the Primal Incarnates, oh my god, 20,000 years of war, of imprisonment, how dare you? And then the very next patch turns around and is like, I'm on your side now with, pacing issues. So hopefully, they'll definitely have like the time and the depth to go into these characters. So yeah, I love Firak because he's just a scumbag. Same. He is just Firak, and he just wants to fucking burn down the world. It doesn't need a 5D chess plan. It just needs to be a fucking fire-breathing dragon. That's awesome, and that's exactly what he was. I loved it, but I'm just saying, like, the development could have been deeper.
Quite both surprised and excited by the reception of Xal'atath. I think having kind of those foundations where there's some of the community that's like, oh, you're just getting to know this person, where other people have, like Terran mentioned, have been kind of questing with her or experiencing her story in the past. And there's also a lot of really fun stuff and opportunities as we are able to plan so far ahead now, where we can plant these seeds knowing, this is the destination. And as we're moving towards that direction, what are things that we can kind of plant? And maybe the players find them, maybe they see it, and maybe they don't. There was some text that showed up in Dalaran where they were talking about like, oh, wait a minute, that's new. What's going on here? And they were kind of piecing together some stuff.
One thing I love that we
So this again goes into the whole idea of like, I mean, without context, it would be spoilers, I suppose. It's more like pointing you in the right direction. Interesting. I'm not going to dive deeper into it either, but interesting.
We set forth to do was mid-Dragonflight, in the spirit of wanting to seed these stories sooner, to have people along for the ride, to notice the little details. And there was this moment with Iridikron when he was escaping through a portal, and in development we had just slipped this little shadow, elven silhouette in the background of the portal. And a lot of people were like, no one's ever going to notice that. And we're like, that's the idea.
Of course
the
we're gonna
idea
notice
is
that.
that
What do
it's
you
so
mean?
subtle that when they discover it, it's going to generate all this conversation. And it did, right? There was all this conversation about Xal'atath, and everyone started to get really excited. And so that kind of started building a slow burn on everyone getting Xal'atath into the conversation. So by the time she was announced at BlizzCon, it actually felt like, oh, yes, we've been expecting this.
Obviously.
Obviously, right? So it's just fun ways that we're trying to seed and plant and prepare the audience for what's ahead.
I think one.
I will say though, I remember that when that elven silhouette showed up in the portal, it wasn't so much that people didn't notice the elven silhouette, but more like, what is that supposed to represent? And I remember there was a discussion going on between, is that a Xal'atath or is that an Azora? Which I thought was kind of cool.
One of the things that makes Xal'atath really, really interesting for players is there's an awful lot of them that want to be her buddy, who don't see her as a villain, right? So no villain is the villain of their story. They're the hero of their story. And that makes this interesting, too, because we can play with that a little bit. We can make sure that we're leaning into it. Is she really the villain?
So the world is just as important as the villains. Maria, what approach have you taken for world building?
I mean, as Terran pointed out, and I think we've talked about in the past, the world really is one of our main characters. And it's really important that when we go into these different zones that we've created, they feel alive, they feel appropriate to their cultures that live within them. Unexpectedly, perhaps, we decided to make this a very vertical expansion. So we're starting off on the surface in the Isle of Dorn, which has your classic plains, your beautiful grasslands, and big city, Dornogal. This is where our Earthen live, trying to carry out the edicts of the Titans. And this is where the Coreway is located. So we go down the Coreway and we get down into the Ringing Deeps. And the Ringing Deeps is where the machine speakers, the Earthen that are dedicated to tending the machines and the vast works of the Titans live and work. And so where we're really starting to subvert expectations is when you go from the Ringing Deeps into Hollowfall. It's a huge, huge area. You can't tell that it's underground. You can't tell that it's a cavern. It's lit by this enormous crystal. And then as you descend, you're going to go down into the last kingdom of the Nerubians, into Azj-Kahet. And this is all about danger and dark elegance. And the whole area is meant to serve as an opportunity to learn about the Nerubians and their big city there, which has been built upon centuries and centuries and centuries of decay. They just build the city on top of itself.
Yeah, I wouldn't have expected that going.
Did she just say the last kingdom of the Nerubians? Aww. I thought like, oh, okay, we're gonna get like one Offspring kingdom, then surely it could be more. But of course, it might just be a slip of the tongue, I guess, during this presentation. But yeah, like what they mentioned during this, I honestly agree. Like the whole design of the place is really cool. That you go down and then you split apart. When it comes to the crystal, we still don't know what the crystal is. But we do know that it's not Sargeras' sword, and we know that due to story reasons, but also because they mentioned it right after BlizzCon. But the crystal is very much a question, and recently they did like a Xal'atath cutscene, which again deals with the crystal. And then on the WoW Twitter, they immediately started posting about what the crystal is, like what it does in that zone. So they're trying to kind of like make a connection between Xal'atath and the crystal. Is this like how Xal'atath arrived on Azeroth? Is that what it's here for? And one thing that I'm also very curious about is that they're showing us the cutscene again with like Xal'atath coming out of the wall and bringing the Nerubians under her wing. And what I'm curious about is that in the cutscene, we learned that the Nerubians were living their lives A-okay until the Black Empire showed up and they were like, you need to stand with us for the final stand of the Black Empire. And I'm going to assume that this was done during Battle for Azeroth because during the original Black Empire, the Nerubians did not exist quite yet. The Nerubians are evolutions from the Akir under the influence of the old god Yogg-Saron. So I'm going to assume, unless the lore has been changed, that this was during Battle for Azeroth, right? But then my question would be, if the Nerubians lived happily their lives underground for millennia, why did it suddenly change when they told the Black Empire no? And it's not impossible to answer. Like, did Xal'atath manipulate things? Is that why they started to suffer? Or, like, my question is more like, why did they start to suffer? Could they not have burrowed elsewhere? What exactly changed when they said no? And I'm kind of curious that that's going to come into play. It is a minor detail, ain't it? But, you know, lore man's gotta wonder.
Vertically down.
Yeah. It's one of the things that we learned from Zaralek Cavern in Dragonflight.
Exactly, Flux.
We knew we were making an underground space. We knew we wanted players to be able to transition seamlessly into that space. The idea was to sort of give you this increasingly wondrous, joyful descent, and make the world really feel alive, make it feel like it fits with those cultures that are living there. The reactions that we saw from people playing on beta when they first entered Hollowfall, which is just amazing.
Oh, it's
yeah, I
such
love
a
the
gorgeous
attention
zone.
to detail on all the zones. I mean, you just mentioned Hollowfall, but like something that it took me a while to even notice it, but when I did, it like blew my mind was, like you mentioned, there's that huge crystal underground, and it's the sole light source. So if you look around the zone, all of the trees and the plants are actually facing that light source. Like if you think about plants out in the world, they kind of follow the sun. Well, what if the sun was static?
We have a desire to help make everything feel right. Everything needs to feel like it makes sense. So for the Arathi, they have these airships, and so all of their tables and chairs and props and things that are scattered around their city, they all have these brackets on them because they would have been mounted on the airships when they traveled. Another good example is the earthen. So the earthen are made of stone, and another good example is the earthen. So the earthen are made of stone, and their beds, entertainingly, look almost like a barbecue because they like to be warm. So there's fiery coals underneath them on their beds, and you can see them.
One of the other things I love about the earthen is they actually have these like memory crystals, because they themselves are almost more of a construct, but this memory crystal has, you know, their experiences, their memories, their, you know, life story in them. And early on in the campaign, we learn about that memory crystal. And Dagran, who's quite the little tinkerer, finds this fascinating. And there's like a whole quest line where you get to learn about these memory crystals, and you kind of put them back in the archive, and you get to learn about this culture as you're kind of experiencing through the lens of these memory crystals.
And then
Speaking about the Irvin, by the way, when they introduced the Irvin, I was very meh about it. Not gonna lie. I thought, oh my god, more dwarfs, yay! But props to Blizzard. They made me love the Irvin. Their characters and their society and the story that plays out, the philosophical debates that come out of the Irvin storyline are fucking top tier. Like, I'm not even joking. One of the quests in the island needs to be voice acted, and it's phenomenal. Of course, all of this is opinion, because I'm seeing chat and it's like, I still am fucking Irvin. I get you. They're not exactly rude people and whatnot. But, you know, for me, props to Blizzard. I thought that their storylines and their characterizations were fucking phenomenal.
for the Nerubians, we have a really funny local story, a really funny sort of take on what would happen if you encountered a Nerubian who had a fear like arachnophobia, but they're terrified of bipedal creatures because they don't have enough limbs, and it's just creepy, and it freaks them out. And there's so many more examples. The team really had a great time building out these cultures and these stories.
One of the things Morgan mentioned earlier was making it easier for players to play the way they want to play. How is that being reflected in the content we are building?
Yeah, I mean, we certainly learned a lot from Dragonflight. One of the areas that we started to improve on and now have continued is some UI improvements around both the icons on quests in the world, but also the quest journal. We've got some cool filtering that will let people find the kinds of quests that they're looking for and the kinds of activities. We have some great UI elements when you hover over markers on the map that let you see what sort of reward there might be and how much time it's going to be before something starts for events, for example. Additionally, with the introduction of warbands, we know that players may not want to play the story over and over. They may choose to play it on one of their characters and then play other things. And so we've made sure to provide a lot of local stories. These are stories that tell more about zones themselves, tell about the cultures in those zones, tell about the places, different individual smaller characters. We've provided those in a slightly greater number than we had in the past. We are making sure that we're using some of our new features as well to help tell the story. So we have been quite cognizant of the concerns that players who don't do a lot of raiding have raised about wanting to see that final moment. And so we're allowing players to do a story mode version of the raid, to have that final fight without needing to go to the trouble of getting a raid group or finding, enough friends to go defeat that boss.
Okay, she's saying a lot, and it's all such good okay, I need to keep it clean. Good stuff. A while back, we did like Operation Lore Museum, in which I offered some suggestions into offering players a better experience that they get in the storyline. And all these stuff that they're talking about is actually quite nice. What I would like to say, so far as it stands right now, there's a follower raid option, but it unlocks 1 week after normal, which I think is phenomenal. But it's not perfect. Like, I'm just gonna say it's not perfect. I would like it on day one, and I would like it for the entire raid, not just the end fight. I would like to see the entire raid. If we're gonna make it available for everybody, just make it available for everybody. And we've had these discussions before where people were like, oh yeah, I would love a story mode and give me some transmog, give me some pets, give me some gear. To which I say no. I want a story mode purely for story. I don't need rewards. I just want to go in. I want to see what the story's out, and that's it. I got LFR if I want easy rewards, which you can delay with release because you want people subscribed longer. I could hit normal, heroic, mythic, whatever. I just want story mode for story mode. That's my take on that. But to see them actually add the option for players to go in a week later is phenomenal. But like I said, my major take on this is you want your players to experience the story as you present it. And already we have the problem of data mining, beta, PTR, already spoilers galore. We have the problem of US being released before EU. Having players have to stay offline for a week in order to avoid those spoilers just kind of sucks, right? Like it's like there's no, like if, let us not pretend like people raid because they want to get the storyline. I would argue that getting the story while raiding is one of the more difficult challenges because you're dodging swirlies, you're fighting the fights, you're paying attention to tactics. Story is the last thing in your mind. So why not have a story mode? Now, I don't know if that's like a technical difficulty as well, because you got to imagine like the whole follower system is quite new. But I do love the follower system. For those who are like, what are you talking about? Blizzard is pushing towards the idea of giving you a more single-player experience when it comes to World of Warcraft. I think this is in response to a dwindling player base. Like, we've seen them open up the floodgates between the Alliance and the Horde, being able to play with each other. Once upon a time, those bridges would not have been crossed. These days, they're like, yes, play together, and I'm a big fan of it. But I think, like, with an eye on the future, nobody likes to be stuck in a queue for an hour. If you just want to get your storyline and your questing experience, right? So I would argue, like, let's get it done. Let's get a follower group going and just get the raid done. It does not need rewards. I just want to see your story, right? What do you mean? The reason stumbling? Sorry. Yeah, and like into MSQ campaign, I mean, the story has always been connected to the raid. That's the interesting part. Like even in Dragonflight, you basically the questing leads into the dungeons and leads into the raids, and then with the defeat at the final boss, it's like, okay, cool, you've done the main thing. Wait until the next patch. That's always been the case. It's just that for some reason they've decided to delay LFR with several weeks. And I don't really get that, but I guess that has to do with the rewards that are tied to it, and you want to keep people on. Okay, fair enough. And then the argument is like, yeah, but you could just go normal and whatnot. But if you're just a casual player that wants to get your storyline, your story experience, which they're now heavily promoting, I would be all for it if they can actually give that in a solo player experience. Sometimes people are abrasive. That's the callback for single player flexibility. Sorry, I missed out on what we originally were talking about, Stumblins. But if you're, if the point is that joining like raids and the group finals and whatnot is a bit of a toxic experience, I would 100% agree. And being able to do it on your own, yes. How little Karazhan was about the main story, but still had its own unique story. It was great. Yeah, it's an interesting development. As well as during the presentation, like she talked about a lot of cool stuff. So we also got like new markers and whatnot, and they're making an effort into cleaning up the map and making it more visible. For those that might have come into Dragonflight and you boosted a character, it is an absolute mess. Like me personally, I kept up with all the patches. It is near impossible to figure out what quests to do and where the markers are taking you. So I'm so happy that they're actually making an effort to change that. I'm trying to find out one boss.
Cultures in those.
Oh yeah, I also had the comment earlier about Feirin being like the only black character amongst the Arafi. That's not true. That is not true. What I found really interesting about Feirin is that people had opinions ready the moment that they saw the model. And, you know, once you play the game, once you play the story, you can form your opinions about characters. And you can love and hate characters as they are. But to just see a data mined character and already have such a vitriol opinion on it, I found really interesting. Not even knowing what the story was going to be. People already knew what the story was going to be, right? But that's going to be the internet. And when it comes to, like, the skin color, no, there's more characters out there. It's the whole mixture between Arafi and High Elven from back in the day. It's there. Yeah. Roy.
Those zones tell about the players who
and
were
this
using
boss,
some of our new
right?
features as well to help tell the story. So
This dungeon, where this boss is connected, is one of the most sick experiences that I've had in WoW. Honestly, the dungeon is so cool. I don't know how well it's been developed, but the first time we went through around it, I thought to myself, this is one of the best dungeons they ever made, but I think the player base is going to absolutely despise it.
have been quite cognizant of the concerns that players
So
who
hopefully
don't do a
that's been
lot of
fixed.
raiding have raised about wanting to see that final moment. And so we're allowing players to do a story mode version of the raid to have that final fight.
Isn't it because she's named Lofar after Enduin Lofar, who is white? Well, if that's why people are upset, then, you know, there's still the whole part about the skin color thing, but she's not named after Enduin Lofar. That's the whole thing. It's part of the Lofar bloodline, like the Lofar family name, right? And even so, at the end of the day, even if it's just a skin color, like, why care? In a world with all the races that WoW offers to play with, why does this get such a vitriol reaction, right?
Without needing to go to the trouble of getting a raid
yeah.
group or finding, you know, enough friends to go defeat that boss. Same thing with dungeons. We added follower dungeons that allow people to play by themselves or with friends, and followers that are controlled by the computer. Delves is a new feature that we're really, really excited about. It's intended to help those outdoor players be able to pop in and do something fun and meaningful, and maybe they only have a short period of time. Now, Delves also have a progression system and a whole bunch of other stuff associated with it. So we want to make sure that everybody gets a chance to understand and enjoy the story in the way that they like to play, recognizing that everybody doesn't have as much time or opportunity to sit down and, you know, join a big group of people.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the major goals, is not only with variety of things that you might be familiar with, like a lot of the cool outdoor events that you might have seen, and we want to make sure that you can kind of pick and choose the ones that you find exciting and you feel rewarded for those without feeling like you're kind of required to do everything. And then with Delves, you know, that's a new pillar of content that we're building where you wouldn't previously have been able to kind of experience this idea of like progression, but also building upon the story that we've been discussing. There's a big bad in there named Zekvir, who's kind of a lieutenant of Xal'atath, and this person's in charge of looking for the world soul memories that we're going to be learning more about as we progress through the War Within. And you'll eventually be able to unlock this Zekvir's lair, which is, you know, I kind of equate it to like Onyxia's lair. So there's this big boss at the end of this experience that really feels like it's kind of the cherry on top for this progression, as well as this story that we're telling as you experience Delves.
Like I said, I am phenomenal. Phenomenal for the Delves and the story potential that it has. Like, I love scenarios from Mr. Pandaria. I really hope Delves are gonna knock it out of the park. Devil's Advocate, why not just watch a stream or a YouTube video of the raid if you just want a story? Because you are someone who plays World of Warcraft with a subscription fee. And World of Warcraft is currently being promoted as a game, which has a really cool storyline that goes on in the game. Why would anyone buy your product to just watch the story on YouTube, right? As well as not the same as just watching a video. That's definitely true. But and you're definitely playing Devil's Advocate, which I love, honestly. My question would more be, I understand that World of Warcraft is a game built upon the carrot on a stick model, which is there's a reward in front of you, and you play the game in order to get to that reward. For example, I really wanted Tavon, the dog mount. I played an absurd amount of WoW, and I did things that still make me feel disgusted about myself, but I got Tavon. That is what WoW is built upon, a carrot on a stick model. My argument is that the story should not be the carrot. The story should be freely available for anybody. You should not have to buy books. You should not have to buy chronicles. You should not have to check out my YouTube channel. You should be able to get the story in the game at the moment that everybody else gets it as well. And therein lies the difficulty because, as I mentioned, people that go into the raid on normal heroic will get the story before LFR, right? So those that have like static groups, those that have people to play with, they will get the story first. Not to mention that there are such things as data mining and beta and PTR. The story is designed by developers in such a way that you experience it through your gameplay. The argument of you can get it on YouTube is great. It's the reason why my raid videos are some of the most popular that I do, but it shouldn't be that way, in my opinion.
What's one thing you guys are excited for players to experience?
Oh, I think there's just some fantastic local stories out there that are helping sell some of the themes that we're exploring. We also have a fascinating situation where Anduin, who has had some pretty tough times and is doubting himself quite a bit, comes face to face with Farron, who is a great contrast. She's very strong in her faith in herself and in the light, and the two of them meeting and having this opportunity to talk to each other. I think this is also a really key and important moment.
I'm right there with Maria. I'm just excited for people to get to meet these new characters. And there's a lot of like really fun story, not only with those individual characters, but also the cultures that the team has been building. You know, a fun little detail, which isn't a spoiler, is you actually see these like links.
Sorry, you got the answer during ads. Hang on, ads are coming back now. I'll reverse it anyways because I'm reading chat and we can see some cool shit in between. So long story short, if you want like the long version, it will be up in the vault. But long story short, the developers create a storyline in World of Warcraft with the design of the game in mind. That is the product that we pay for. In my opinion, you should not need to... the carrot on a stick model for WoW is based upon you want something, so you play the game, like a mount or gear or whatnot. My opinion is that the story, which is now heavily promoted, should not be your rewards because multiple reasons, you know, gated content, hurdles to jump over, getting your story while fighting a boss is not the greatest experience. And while I find it fantastic that people go to my YouTube videos to watch my raids and get the story, it's great for, you know, the numbers. I don't think it should be outside of the outside of the game. And as people mention, like, you know, extra details can be in books. That's fine. That's fantastic. But the main story should be available in the game. That's the product that's being sold. And my opinion is that it's not the reward that people raid for, right? Like if we want to argue that people raid to get the story, yeah, I disagree. That is not the motivation why people jump into the raid. I would argue that while our community loves the lore, the bigger part of WoW doesn't care about it. And while you can definitely make changes, and you can definitely develop your game in a different way, but therein lies the key. Develop your game in a different way. Make the story available. Add more stay a while and listens. Add more cutscenes, ways that you invest people into your storytelling. There are so many things that they can do to make people more engrossed into the story than they've done. And that's what they're working on, right? And that's the whole point. That's the whole pudding. Ow, ow, ow. Well, I saw a comment earlier as well. Okay, gotta move on. Hell yeah.
Great contrast. She's very strong in her faith in herself and in the light. And the two of them meeting and having this opportunity to talk to each other. I think this is also a really key and important moment.
I'm right there with Maria. I'm just excited for people to get to meet these new characters. And there's a lot of like really fun story, not only with those individual characters, but also the cultures that the team has been building. You know,
totally.
A fun little detail, which isn't a spoiler, is you actually see these like lynxes that the Arathi in the zone are riding around on, and that's like a fun kind of nod to how when they set out they actually went with some elves, and there's almost like this blend of cultures that are coming together in this zone, and it's really fun to kind of see all those little details as they express themselves in the game.
I think it's always an exciting time as we draw closer to the launch of an expansion where all of the content is going to be added to the game, even stuff that was obscured or hidden during testing or PTR. This classically represents the cinematics that the team has been working on for a long time and have some really amazing moments. I think the team has done amazing work on this, and I can't wait to see people's reactions to that content. And also, you know, from all directions, every tool in our toolkit, we release more multimedia projects. I know that just recently we saw the story of Queen Ansarek in the cinematic we released, and that's in this vein of trying to build up our villains, give context, give backstory, give dimensionality, and seeing how things are stirring. And all of these different projects are coming together to really amplify and excite around the story of the War Within and set the stage for the ongoing World Soul Saga.
Yeah, Lynx mounts. They're all a big part of the Arathi culture, yeah. Did you miss anything? Yes, nearly the entire stream, blue-eyed. Hello there.
Thank you guys so much for joining me and talking about the World Soul Saga and the world building of the War Within.
Honestly, though, they're talking about, some good shit, I will admit. I don't know if I would necessarily agree with the idea that like Dragonflight is a good foundation, but I will say that Dragonflight is a good jumping board. Somebody mentioned in the chat like Dragonflight is a good in-between expansion. I would agree. Wash out the bad taste of the Shadowlands, even though Shadowlands is not entirely bad, don't get me wrong, but my lordy, did it do some damage. Like, I've had many conversations during the convention, and all I hear is people saying, like, I bailed during Shadowlands, and I'm pondering, like, what is the War Within going to be about? Now, I will hold on to the idea that it wasn't just the storyline. The storyline didn't help, but it was mainly the gameplay that pushed people away. And again, I think that is WoW's major driving force. Now, we do see that there's a change in the winds. There's a focus on the storytelling. My skeptical mind says that that is because they just don't have that much gameplay to talk about. My hopeful mind is that because they've recognized the player base can actually enjoy their story. Like, there's a reason why my lore channel has been going on for so long. There's a reason why there's definitely an audience for people that are interested in it, and they can definitely create a different experience. Like, you can have best of both worlds. WoW is king, in my opinion, when it comes to gameplay, and they could be amazing at telling stories as well. So hopefully, like, these are building blocks, right? And Dragonflight has done some good shit for building blocks into the future, and War Within can be those building blocks next up. Like, we've been talking about what could WoW do, especially during the beta times, to be like mind-blowing to get people back into the game. And one of the things that we got to the conclusion is that it would be unrealistic in the realm of expectations to be like, okay, I want a revamped world, I want new classes, new storyline, new characters, I want interest in this and that and that. It's just unrealistic at that point where they just can't deliver to such a thing. But what if they just continue to do what they've been doing so far, which is smaller changes for a better overall experience, which they have been doing. Warbands are sick. Honestly, I think warbands are great. Their turnaround time when it comes to fixing things, like the War Within pre-event was god-awful. They got the feedback, they changed it, they fixed it, and now it's one of the better events that are rolling out. They've let go of the faction between the Alliance and the Horde and let people play with each other. They've let go of the idea of confining you to certain dog systems, right? Personally, I haven't experienced it, but people have been mentioning that Dragonflight gameplay has actually been top-notch, like raiding and Mythic Plusing. They've been enjoying it very much. All good stuff, all things. And of course, nothing is going to be perfect, right? Of course not. But I'm hoping that with small changes, they're just going to pave a road into a much better experience, but nobody's going to predict the future. For all I know, I'm just devouring the expansion hype right now, and I'm just devouring the copium that we get with these announcement videos. Could be a thing. But at the same time, the future is... Wait, whoa. What did Xal'atath have above her head? What the f***? What happened there? Wait, hang on. Did I just see that right? Get me the Dalaran cutscene. Oh, that's the Dark Heart. Wait. Xal'atath, what are you doing with the Dark Heart above your head? Are you doing a Citizen of Dalaran? Are you sucking out the magic in the air? I hadn't noticed that in that stupid small cutscene thingy. Huh. She brought the Dark Heart to Dalaran. Oh well, fucking rip Dalaran. Yeah, no, I looked at the teaser earlier, but I did it in a small screen. I hadn't noticed the Dark Heart above her head. Yeah, there it is, cool. So, yeah, long story short, I like what Blizzard is cooking, and I acknowledge that the Blizzard of the past is no longer there. But that doesn't mean that the future can't create something cool. Will it be different? Yeah, sure. But it doesn't mean it can't create something cool, right? Will it be for everybody? No, of course not. If you're asking me, I had fun with Dragonflight. I had fun with Dragonflight, checking out the story and whatnot, but I could definitely acknowledge, okay, it wasn't entirely perfect. And so far, when it comes to the War Within, I've been having fun with the leveling experience and checking out the storylines. And as they mentioned as well, they're dropping little seeds as to what story is going to come. I'm very excited what's going to come. I wonder if it's going to be life or light first, but yeah, we're going to find out. We're going to find out.